Right, Martin is telling us about Thailand.
Yeah, yeah. So we've Jan and I have just been back up for a bit of an extended trip this time. We went up for 3 weeks, which was terrific because it gave us a lot more time to do a few more things that we really wanted to do. Um, so look, I think a lot of people are aware that the area that I do focus on is at Tarkanoon, and we have now been successful in we've located the base camp at Tarkanoon now, which was terrific. We've also now located the old camp, the 203 camp in 1943, because what we've discovered is that there is actually two camps there. The camp which is visible in the aerial photographs is the camp which was established in 1945. That's when the photographs were taken. But the original camp, which is very, very well described in John Coast's book, is actually just a little bit to the north of that location, and we managed to actually get onto the site this time in, and yeah, it was really interesting to actually get there, read the descriptions which John Coast writes about, Hardy writes about, and some of the other Group 2 diaries that write about that particular camp, and we were pretty confident that yeah, we'd actually sort of landed on the right location. We had a bit of a problem getting in there because we always like to get permission, of course, from the landowners, and quite often when we go to these places, it's the Mon workers that are actually working on the sites, and they're quite happy for us to come and go if we talk to them and let them know what we're doing. But this particular place, we had to talk to the owners in Bangkok, and they were insistent that there was no prison camp on their land. So we got permission to go in anyway and have a look around, and so we spent a bit of time with a metal detector having a bit of a rummage, and we managed to pull some convincing pieces out the ground, like base of a cigarette lighter and some other bits and pieces. Also a little revolver head, a bullet head. So we were pretty convinced that we were in the right location. Then later that morning, another guy turned up who was it appears he was the foreman of the Mon workers who worked on the site, and he took objection to us being there, and unfortunately he turned us out, and we weren't able to get back in there again, which is a bit of a shame, but it's a work in progress. We're going to try and get back in. I went back up the following week with Rod, because he was interested to come and have a look. And when Rod and I went there, they were quite adamant that there's no camp here, and you can't come in. So we went up to the other area, which is a 206 camp, which is obviously another three k's further up. When we first went in there, Jan and I and Andrew Snow went up there. We actually went up by river. We got a boat from Tarkanoon village itself, and then went up by boat, and we landed from the bank. And when we went and did our first look at the area and have a rummage around, we found a magnificent cigarette case. So and obviously plenty of nails. And nails are always a good telltale sign that you're on the right location. And so the second time we went back up with Rod, and Rod came up with his metal detector, and we had a good couple of hours or so on the site, and we pulled up tent pegs, we pulled up buckles, and a magnificent little Japanese rice bowl with a rising sun painted in the base of it.
Mm.
So certainly it was fantastic to establish we were on the right location. Then we went up onto the hill adjacent to the camp area and stood there with Hardy's drawing of the location, and it all just fitted perfectly. You could see the big bluff in the background of Hardy's drawing. You can see the bluff standing there above the river, and then you could see where where the camp sat in the drawing, and when it had sloping sides to it. You could see that quite clearly, and that also put us into perspective where the cemetery would have been, which was just to the north of the camp. There was a large flat top area, and we had a look there, and we found some quite large rocks and boulders in there. So it sort of really did indicate that was the right location. So yeah, look, we've had a really fantastic trip this last trip up. Obviously, we want to try next trip when we go. We want to try and get back up and do some more work, surveying the 206 camp, and certainly work hard on see if we can get permission to get back in the old camp at 203, because that's quite a unique site in itself, because that particular camp is so well documented. Going back and rereading John Coast's book, Chapter 10, when you read it and after going in there, you can actually go, yeah, this is definitely the right place. This is definitely the location. So there was a few bits and pieces that we did find in there, and we were able, for example, this little tiny lead. This was the first thing we actually found, little pistol, lead bullet. We also found lead in there, which is also little ingot. So we actually believe they've been manufacturing lead-filled bullets and other lead components, because at the other camp, at the 204 camp, which is the transport camp, we found lots of lead up there, lots of lead ingots, just little tiny circles just laying under the surface. So they're either using them to make bearings, or they're making bullet heads, or what, we don't know. But there's certainly a lot of evidence up there. So it was pretty rewarding this trip around. So what I want to try and do is obviously document all this stuff as best we can, and do some mapping of the area. So there's obviously some other camps in the area, but they're going to be very hard to locate, because they don't have great descriptions around them like another like John Coast is very, very descriptive in his writing, and it makes it easier to follow and find the locations. Whereas some of the other areas like Tarkanu North would be very hard to find, because I don't believe it's probably right on the river, like the other two camps are, and they're in a lot of dense farm area, so it would be pretty hit and miss. So yeah, no, it was extremely good trip. So that's probably the project I'm going to work on going forwards, is continue on the Tarkanu project, and highlight these camps and work on. And I've been putting together some data and spreadsheet around all the people that died on the two camps. There's only 32 burials on the 203 camp, but there's 300 plus on the 206 camp. So I'm just putting all that stuff together at the moment, and then obviously documenting all the other bits and pieces that we found, and then basically writing a bit of a history around the camps and how we've located them, and we got a lot of, like I say, a lot of photographs, and so we want to put all those together as well, and make sure those camps are always remembered.
You're really bubbling. You are really bubbling. That's great to see, though, Martin. You really are getting into this, aren't you?
Well, I mean, I've been driven for a long time, because I always wanted to find the camp where my grandfather died and where he was buried, and I can actually say I found it now. When you read Aldrich and Bapp's diary, they talk about relocating the 203 Tarkanu camp, which they call the 220 camp, because Coast calls it the 203, but then War Diary is 220, because there was a chainage survey at Tarkanu and there was a 17-kilometre adjustment made. So 220 camp or 203 camp is the same location. And so I've been determined for many years to.
You okay? We just had. Yeah, we just had. Are you all okay, Martin? Where are you?
Went off.
Yeah, he went off.
Gone.
Yeah,
Yeah, went
Bernard came on and threw him off.
yeah. Right, we can hear you now, Kevin. Can we?
Yes, you can hear me okay?
Yeah. Of course, your mic was off. Bernard.
Yeah.
Bernard.
He's got his microphone.
Mic off.
Bernard, your mic is off.
All right now?
Yeah, you're there, mate. You're there.
Why aren't I getting any invitations, Ron?
You should be.
No,
I got mine all right.
Yeah, you're on the list, Bernard, and you haven't been taken off, so
Yeah.
you should have got it.
I didn't.
Honestly, you have so many problems with your computer, mate.
I'm not on the computer, I'm on the tablet. It doesn't work on my computer.
Oh, well, you definitely sent an invitation because I haven't taken you off the list, and everybody else has got them.
Did you send a new one now?
I can't send one at this minute, but definitely.
No.
You've
I've
definitely
had this
been sent
now.
one.
I sent you an email telling you now that I didn't have one. And now you've come on now.
Yeah, I haven't had that. Well, I haven't had an email from you saying you haven't got an invitation.
But I've sent it. I sent it about 10 minutes ago.
I tell you what, Bernard, someone shot your pigeon, mate.
Must have. Must have.
No, I certainly haven't had one, Bernard. I'm looking down the list of family members that have sent me telling me they can't make it, and you're not there. And that where it would have come to. Anyway, let's just go over. Jenny Leeson couldn't make it. Jennifer Allen couldn't make it. Christine McIntyre couldn't make it. Jan Skilton couldn't make it, and Ray couldn't make it, and Keith couldn't make it. So they're all the ones who couldn't make it today. Okay. Yeah, that was an interesting month for me. We lost you, Martin. You went. You disappeared.
I dropped out for some reason. Yes.
Yeah, well, Bernard came on and you went. You've gone again. No, you ain't. You're there. Bernard come on and you went. So I should think that was just overload. Anyway, I've had an interesting month. The month we did have two members that were talking about the volunteers in Malaya. And so I thought, well, we better do something about it because I haven't really done anything about the volunteers in Malaya, the Straits or the Federated Malay Force. So I thought I better do something. So I started looking into it and started putting some databases together for the Roll of Honour. And that was quite interesting. I had read about the Suk Ching massacre before, but I did do some going into it, and it's a bit of a. Oh, you don't hear much about it, but the Japs called it the purge through cleansing, and they reported they'd put to death 5,000 Chinese in Malaya or Singapore, Malaya, and now the Singapore have claimed they didn't. That wasn't 5,000; it was 70,000 that the Japanese put to death in the cleansing, which it's not cleansing, it's murder, isn't it? You know, if you're putting a nation to death, it's murder. It's not cleansing at all. So that was that. Then I started putting together some databases for the Straits volunteers, and then the Federated States of Malaya, Malay volunteers, and that was quite interesting because you see a lot of pictures of civilians being put to death by the Japanese, used as bayonet practice and whatever, and it doesn't really, you see the pictures and it doesn't really put into perspective what happened. But the Straits, SSVR, they were told, or some of them were told, so Jonathan Moffat says that the commander of the brigades told them they could go back to their villages. So a lot of them took off their uniforms and went back to the villages. And it seems as though some of the villagers pointed them out to the Japanese and they were executed. So when you have a look at the timeline for the Straits volunteer, the SSVR, you can see the dates that they actually put them to death. Because when you look at the timeline, you can see which dates had a lot of deaths, and this is all after the surrender. So the 17th, I think, had about 19 deaths all in one go. So that looks to me as though the Japanese were going around and collecting the force, the SSVR. They were collecting the men that had gone back to the villages and just executing them. They didn't, because they're out of uniform, I suppose they decided they're out of uniform, they could kill them. So it's interesting reading. And then the police is another one, because when you look at the Straits police force, the same thing happened to them. You can see the combination of deaths after Singapore surrendered. And it must have been when they collected them together and just executed them. So the timeline did help me understand what had happened. So that was quite interesting. I put the Malayan one on today, the Malayan Royal Navy Volunteer Reserves. I put them on today, but that's a bit more difficult to understand a timeline with them because you don't know where the ships were or anything, but they are on there, so at least I'm covering them now in the Roll of Honour. So that was interesting. That did really make some of these pictures we see of the Japanese bayoneting them and using them for shooting practice. We say shooting practice, but were they just executing them? That makes it more sense, if you can understand what I mean. Very sad, though, you know. But the Japanese and Chinese have been at war since 1937, was it? 1937. So you can understand there was a lot of hatred there. And most of them of the Chinese they actually killed. So anyway, Kevin. Come on, yeah. Kevin.
Hello.
Come on.
Well,
yeah.
Well, I have to apologise for missing a few meetings, Ronnie, because I did went into the hospital for an operation, so I was laid up for a good while. But I've been busy. I think you know my father left Singapore on the evacuation ships, and he was captured in the Bangka Strait, and he ended up in Palembang. Well, there's a man called Michael Pether. He's a New Zealand guy. He's done some really deep research into the evacuation ships. And I've been in contact with him. I've got loads of information regarding like what happened to my father, people in his regiment. Because it turns out there was about four ships in my dad's regiment, which was the RAOC. They were like split up amongst them ships and were all evacuated. And a good while ago, the great niece of the senior commanding officer, it was called Major Ortega. Well, he died on the ship, and she didn't know what happened to him or anything. Well, I give as much information as I had, but Michael had a load of more information, and there was actually an eyewitness account of how he died. So I was able to pass that on to her, and that really finished the story off for her. And that was really good that somebody could put a final, final piece of the jigsaw into his story. And she's actually been in contact with Michael himself, because his research notes had all that stuff about Major Ortega as well. So it's been pretty interesting. I've got the links. I can actually send the links for what Michael's put in about these evacuation ships, and it's pretty interesting reading. There was one of the stories. One of the stories, I think, if you might have known about the massacre of the Australian nurses on the Bangor Island. Well, one of the men in my dad's company, he actually survived the bayoneting. He pretended to be died, and he crawled into the jungle, and he met up with Vivian Bullwinkle, who was the only survivor of them nurses. And the two of them spent 12 days in the jungle, and eventually they gave themselves up in Montauk. And unfortunately, the man, he was called Kingsley, he died of his wounds eventually, but he was able to relate the story, what had happened to him. And so was Vivian Bullwinkle able to relate the story, what happened to the nurses. So it's quite interesting how all these things come together. And as I say, it's been a really interesting couple of weeks for me.
Yeah, I had an inquiry during the week, and I can't remember the name now. I put them into the Roll of Honour, and they were at Montauk, and they ended up in Sumatra. Palembang, is that Palembang?
Palembang, yeah.
Yeah, so they ended up there, and I had the date when they were taken across, taken across the straits, and that was quite interesting. But the trouble is, I don't know how he got to Montauk, so I don't know which ship he was on. So
this was always the problem, because there was a record of all the ships, but the actual passengers that were on it, or the servicemen that were on it, wasn't really well documented. And as I say, Michael Pether actually did some really deep research, and he was able to put some names, apart from obviously the crew of the ships, onto his research. And I say it's a really, really good research that what he did.
He used to get in touch quite a bit, Michael. Pether. He used to get in touch quite a bit, but I haven't heard from him for a little while, so he might be deeply into his research.
He must have been doing all that work, yeah. I mean, he's put there's three ships that left Singapore, which he's done some really deep research into. So they're well worth a good read. They're really interesting.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah, so send me a link to his. Has he got it on the web? Send me a link so I can have a look at it and maybe get in touch with him and just ask him if I can put him into the Roll of Honour. It'd be nice to add him in the Roll of Honour. That's the trouble with the ships. You have the Royal Navy personnel, but you don't have the passengers. So I've got the Royal Navy personnel on certain ships, but they haven't got any names of the passengers. Well, a few, but not too many.
Yes.
But that would be interesting. So send me a link and I'll have a look.
Yeah.
The trouble is at the moment, I'm trying to fit in doing some research, and at the same time trying to pack up. And I tell you, there's been loads of tears this end. I mean, Gillian, oh dear, every time you throw something away, because we've been here 32 years and I am a bit of a hoarder, so every time you throw something away, she has a little cry. But oh dear, it's not. They say this is the most stressful thing, moving. Well, when we moved before, that wasn't too bad because you're younger, but now at 72, you can feel it, and the stress. I mean, I've been told I've got to keep my blood pressure down. And She said, if it goes over 136, you better come and see me. Yesterday it was a 152. Yeah, I think that's all the stress. That's trying to get everything done, and oh dear.
Yeah.
But never mind. We'll carry on. Anyway, Tim, are you in your boat
No,
still?
well,
You're
just
still
for the
in your
weekend,
boat. I
I
can
am.
see you are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just for the weekend,
Yeah.
tidied up for the winter.
Yeah.
No, I haven't really got anything on my own research. I'm a little bit stuck at the moment because I've got the prison camps well covered, and I've got what happened with all the prison camps. I'm just a bit stuck on the Java incident. So, but I live in hope, and I've got one good bit. Eventually, will come to light. I think Steve James, who's the son of
Yeah.
whatever Hellships, who wrote the Hellships article in the
Yeah. The one I put on.
on the community page.
Yeah.
Thanks to you giving me his email. I mean, I have to say it was about a year ago or so. He's actually got his father's diary,
Yeah.
but he says he's only ever looked at it once, and now he says it's still rolled up and it's become so brittle. He
Yeah.
doesn't want to undo it until he can
Yeah,
get
well,
a specialist archivist to look at it, and otherwise
yeah.
he's terrified it's going to disintegrate.
I think
But
he sent me a load of it, which I did add, which you've read in
yeah,
the Far Eastern Heroes pages. It was mainly based on the Singapore Maru, wasn't it?
yes, that's right. But
The trip on the Singapore Maru.
his father and my father were not only were they in the same regiment, but I think they were probably on the same officers' training course, and they certainly joined the regiment at the same time, and they both left Singapore together to go to Palembang, to defend the airfields and the oil refineries. So hopefully he'll have covered some of that. The other thing I've got to do is I've got to hassle Keith sometime, because I've been told Brian Green, or the late Brian Green, unfortunately, was the Java expert, and Keith's got all his papers, but I don't think Keith's probably got time to go through them yet.
No, I used to be in touch with Brian. He's a really, really nice chap. He used to give me loads of help with the Java Index. And he said when he got well, he was going to give me more help and help me with the database, adding names to the database, but unfortunately he died. And just after that, I thought, well, it's about time I moved on, because, you can put so much into one thing, and to be honest, that didn't seem to be appreciated by Java people, the Java club. So I thought, well, it's time to move on.
Yeah, it's really the fighting in Java I'm trying to, get my head round, because there's really no official records.
I take it you've got their book, Prisoners of Java. You've got Prisoners in Java.
Yeah, I've got that, and I've got Pat Walker's book on the 6H AA heavy artillery, because although my dad was LAA, they were attached to the 6HA in Java, so that's got a bit in it. And then someone else brought in a book out called, I can't remember what it's called, I haven't got it here at the moment. Anyway, it's about the 48th LAA, which actually covers a bit on the 35th as well. So anyway, I live in hope. I live in hope that bits of the jigsaw fall in again.
They fall in. Yeah, you'll never see the whole picture, but at least you'll see some of it. You never get all the jigsaw pieces. There'll always be bits missing. But no, Tierney, Tierney. He got in touch and said her father was not in. He was RAF reserve though, but he wasn't in the Java Index. And so I thought, well, I'd better add her. So I did add him, and she did write a nice email back, because I sent her his Japanese index card, and she wrote me a nice index back, nice email back, saying that she'd send me some pictures that were taken in Java,
Mm.
and she'd send them to me by post because she didn't know how to work the computer. So she's going to send me them by post. This was done last week. So just lately, there has been quite a few interesting emails, and the thing is, when some of it is just repetitive, so you're just repeating certain things, but some of it, when you start looking into it, you think, oh, I didn't know that, and you look into it further and further,
Oh,
and
yeah, I
in the
know.
end, you start off
And the
with a
book
little inquiry, and it goes
and the books you have to keep rereading. I'm actually really lucky as well on the Japanese camps because my dad was with Meg Parks' father. So, of course, we've got his books and his diaries
yeah,
written out. And there's also a chap called, you may know, John Fletcher Cook, who wrote a book called The Emperor's Guest. And he was also in two of the camps that my father was in. So, they're both actually quite well recounted. So it's lucky.
yeah. I can't remember where I found it. I was during the week. I was looking for something. I came across it, and there was loads of pictures on the Sumatra Railway, which you don't tend to see many things on Sumatra Railway. But there was a load of pictures on the Sumatra Railway which were quite good. They were quite good pictures, and I can't remember where I saw it now. That's the trouble. You're looking for something, you come across something, and you just tend to move on. But no, that was you don't. We were talking about this last time, weren't we, Kevin? There's not a lot on the Sumatra Railway.
No, not really. No.
No, there's not. I mean, we've got loads and loads on the Thailand to Burma Railway, but one of the George Duffy.
Oh yeah,
He was quite interesting. Because he was on the railway, weren't he, on the Sumatra Railway? And I used to his website is still on, and it's worth looking at because he still has got a lot of good information on there. Because he died last year or the year before.
Yeah, only about 2 years ago.
Yeah, but he's got a lot of good information still left on the website, so I don't know who's left it on there, because unless it's a free one. But that's worth looking at. If you just look up Captain Duffy, George was his name, but he always went under Captain Duffy, didn't he?
Yeah, Merchant Navy he was.
Yeah, he was
Merchant Navy as opposed to him.
Yeah, but he was a nice chap. He's always got information. And you were talking about James Jr. Yeah, James Jr. and his dad on the Singapore Maru.
Oh, right.
He's a nice chap. He'll help all he can. I mean, he's really given me loads of information on his dad.
Yeah.
So that's quite good.
That's all right. I'm just waiting for him to get this diary sort of.
Yeah, unfortunately, my dad's diary. When we cleared his house out, he came to live with us after Mum died because he wouldn't go back to the house. So I cleared his house out, and I couldn't find his diary, which he let me read in the 1960s. And luckily, Gillian, my wife, did type out the pages that hadn't faded because he'd written it in pencil. And I asked him where that had gone, and he said he'd thrown it away. Oh dear. But the pages were, I thought I could mess around with them and try and get some more information out of them because that was done in pencil and very, very faded. But he'd thrown it away, so that was a pity. Yeah. But you've got to think, 70 odd years.
Yeah. Well, my dad never kept a diary, but he did. I've got 2 notebooks, and he's recorded in that, things like contents of the soup and meals and menus of what they were, and books he was reading, and when he got a letter, which wasn't very often, things like that, which makes interesting reading, and.
Yeah, well, when we went to Ireland, Southern Ireland, oh, Chris was about 10, so that was about 18 years ago. And I did like their Guinness. That's lovely, smooth. That's not like the stuff we get here, is it? It's lovely and smooth. And in Ireland, they don't have pubs as such. They have a little kind of like a house store, and you go in there. They've got the front room with a little servant hatch, and they're sitting in the front room, and you order, and then they go and get you your beer. So that's very strange in Southern Ireland. Anyway, I went in there, and I said, "God, your Guinness is really lovely." I was drinking the Guinness, and he said, "Yeah, that's fine stuff in it." So I said, "Yes." That's really creamy. That's really lovely. He said, "Yeah, we put anything in that." He said, "If I find a dead rat on the floor, that goes into it."
Oh, God.
Yeah. Another one. This is not feeble, but another one. We were looking for this in Southern Ireland. We were looking for this beach, and we parked the motorhome, and we were going down on our bikes down this hill, and I could see the beach over to the left. Nobody on it. Looked a lovely beach, and I didn't know how we could get to it because there's loads of fields in the way. And this chap on a cycle was coming towards us, so there's nobody else about. So I shouted across the road, "Do you know the way to the beach?" And he said yes, and carried on. Oh dear, oh dear. They've got a funny sense of humour. They really have. Anyway, Bernard, come on, Bernard. Can we hear you,
I'm here.
Bernard? Yeah,
I'm
we can
here.
hear you now, mate. Yeah, you're here. Yeah, anything been happening to you, mate?
Oh, I've had a lot of things happen to me, Ron. I've been in the hospital 3 times, and I've what they've done. You see, I'll explain it. My bile pipe was kinked, so they decided to put a stent in it to straighten it. But that had to come out in 6 months. And I went to have it out in 6 months, and he said, I can't catch it. So he said, I've put another one now inside that, and I've got to leave that a few weeks now before I can go back in. And then he said, we'll have you back. So I've been back, and he said, I failed to get it, Bernard. And he said, I've had to put another one in. I said, how on earth can you get 3 in there? Well, he said, all that one is to make sure that it's a drain. And I said, you're going to have to cut me. And he said, yes, I am. So he said, I don't know the best way to go about it. He said, I'll have to have a word with the team. So anyway, he did email me, and he said, the only place that I think I could send you, Bernard, he said, is to Stoke-on-Trent. And I said, how am I going to get to Stoke-on-Trent from South Wales? And he said, well, leave it with me now. And then he came back to me a few weeks' time, and he said, I've been having a word with the Swansea team. And he said, they've agreed with what I've done so far, but you've got to go and have a CT scan now to find out where they've gone. So I had that last Monday, and now I'm waiting now to find out where I've got to go to have these stents taken back out. So if I'm missing for a few weeks, you know where I am.
Yeah, I said it's a strange, Bernard, because during the week I had another inquiry, and I put together a page, but the mother died while he was a POW, and he died out there. So very similar to your situation. And the children were left to be fostered. Which
Right.
is very similar to what happened to you, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the troubles that we had in the family in those times seems to follow me around, because we don't get any help at all here from my family. What family I've got left? I mean, I've got my son that's got MS that's living with us, and it's quite a strain on us, and we don't know what to do next. That's the sort of situation we're in.
Did you get another dog, or did
No,
you get
we used to.
no?
No, my son's dog is here.
Oh,
We've got him.
yeah,
So we've had a lot of problems lately, Ron, and I don't
yeah.
see an end to it, to be honest with you. And now I got
No.
this now with the hospital. I just don't know what's happening.
Well, always email me, Bernard, if you want to have a chat, or give us, come on Messenger like you have in the past, and we can have a
Yeah,
chat.
yeah. Are you on this other thing, Ron? This WhatsApp?
No. No, my boy keeps telling me to get on it, but I'm not on it. To be
Yeah,
honest, I have enough with what I've got.
yeah, I've gone on
Yeah.
that, and your name isn't on that. I can see your name isn't on that. And the funny thing, when I was looking now, I tried to ring you this morning, and I haven't got a telephone number for you. I don't know where that's gone either.
Oh, well, you used to get in touch with me. To be
Yeah,
honest, our telephone, I think Gillian's mobile is working, but our telephone packs up every now and again because we've got it through. We've not got a line in. We use Wi-Fi, so we've got no line coming in. So our telephone goes through the Wi-Fi, which goes to the windmill down the road and then across the marshes to Cantley, I think it is. So we've got no line in, and our telephone keeps packing up every now and again. But when we do move, we'll go to line in again, so I'll be able to give the telephone number out. But at the moment, we tend to use Gillian's mobile.
right.
So, but you can always message me. You used to.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Yeah, but there's always people here that will talk to you, Bernard. Have a good chat and talk about how many pigeons you've knocked down, so we're not getting your emails and things like that.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I know you. You know, we lost our dog as well, Bernard. But Mickey, our other dog, he tends to be getting over it. So
Yeah.
at first he didn't know what was happening.
I couldn't walk them now anyway, Ron. Walking is
No.
is a thing of the past.
Yeah. And you can't drive now, can you?
Yes, I can drive. In
Oh,
fact,
you can.
I reported that doctor in the hospital, you see, because he put me through a lot of stress, telling me that I couldn't drive, and he reported me to the DVLA, and the DVLA got in touch with me, and I had to let them have access to my hospital records. And after all that, I have a letter now from them to say that I can keep my driving license. They are quite satisfied that I pass all the tests. So I've not only got a license, I got a letter telling me that I can drive.
Yeah,
So I'm better off now.
and of course you take your GPS out with you, don't you?
Yeah.
You do, your
Yeah.
wife.
Yeah.
No, for everyone who's listening here, Bernard takes his wife out with him because he keeps forgetting how to get home.
When I have to go to the hospital now, which is getting more often, I forget about driving myself there, Ron. I get on the phone and I say I need transport, and they send an ambulance for me, which is a lot better for me because I don't have to bother about parking or anything like that. And when my session is over, I just go to the ambulance desk and I say, I want my lift home now. So I find that very good. If I drive the car, I don't think I've driven the car now for about a fortnight. And I haven't missed it, Ron.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's one good thing about having white hair, Bernard. We can get away with it, can't we? We can say
Well,
we can't drive home and things like
you've got to have the stick as well, Ron.
that. Yeah, I haven't got a stick. Yeah, I haven't got a stick, so I'll have to get one. Carry
Have
around
to
with me.
make it.
One of these extending ones, you can pull out and just go up to the desk with it.
I got one of those, Ron. I got one of those, and I've got a rack full of them in the hallway there. I make them, so I'll send you one,
Oh,
Ron.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. That's great. Have we heard? Oh, Martin, you got cut off right in the middle of your telling us.
Yeah.
Go on, you can carry on now.
Okay. Yeah, so I was really just filling in on what we've been up to up in Thailand. And I think where we left off was we were talking about comparing where we were looking against Hardy's sketches in his book. And it was quite amazing to actually position ourselves up on the hill and look back across the open area and able to actually look at it and say, well, that's exactly where the camp was. And I was mentioning that the 203 camp was a particular interest of mine because for a long time I wanted to find the spot where my grandfather had died and was buried, and judging by the explanation and the description in Aldrich's diary, the Wargraves diary, where they've described and what they've described, we went into the camp area and they talk about going in there, and they said it was the cemetery lie in a dip between the camp and the line, and we went into the site which we now know is the camp area, and we found two areas which are definitely depressions, dips in the ground. So we've photographed both those areas, so it's highly likely one of those spots is the place. And it was only a small cemetery there. It was only about 32 graves in there, so it's not a massive area. So I mean that was a huge achievement. So next is basically working further now is to document everything we've got. Just put it into either a document or a short book form on locating the camps and documenting the camps and basically paying a tribute to all the poor fellows who lost their lives up there in that area, in that stretch between the 203 camp and the 206 camp, which of course incorporates Pond's camp as well at in between. There's the Australian camp and also the Japanese transport camp was in between those two camps as well. So there's a fair bit of scope to work on. So what I like about it, what's ideal is that these locations are still there, whereas a lot of the railway in Thailand is now being lost due to agriculture and development. More and more is being bulldozed and pushed over. Each time I go up there, I see a big difference. Rod's estimations are that there's probably only 30% left of the railway in Thailand, and that was one of his points when there was recent talk about making it a World Heritage Site. Well, he said, well, how can you make something a World Heritage Site when there's only 30% left of it in any case? So one of the reasons I really do enjoy researching and studying Tarkanan areas is that a lot of the railway's still there. I mean, a lot of the embankments are still there. And it's still accessible, but it's getting difficult to get to because the areas up around the 206 camp, you either have to go up by river or you need a four-wheel drive to get in there, and obviously that's difficult in itself. So when I went back up with Rod, we took his little Toyota Ute, which is only a two-wheel drive, and we only actually could get in so far, and we actually had to park it up, and we actually had to walk in the rest of the way. And of course, obviously up there, you've got to carry a fair bit of water, and it's very hot. And when we get there, we're normally rummaging around through jungles, areas, and so hacking through thick areas and doing a fair bit of digging. So you get pretty hot pretty quickly. So it'd be really nice to be able to do some more formal type of survey or sort of digging up there. But it's just finding the time to get out there, and the accessibility restricts the time you can spend out there. But that's all planning for the future. That's all future project stuff.
Earlier you said there was only 30 graves there.
And
are there still graves there?
Well, you can't actually. We've had a good look, and we ran metal detectors over the area, hoping to pick up buttons or buckles or things like that. But we didn't get anything definite in the areas that we were looking at, and on that particular area in the 203 camp, it's been farmed a fair bit. It's got a lot of trees on it, and they've obviously cultivated a fair bit in there over the last 75 odd years. But the other camp at the 206, where the actual hut stood on the top of the embankment on top of the river, is actually fairly thick jungle. So it's not been cultivated yet. So in that area, we've actually found some pretty interesting stuff, and that I'm sure holds a lot more stuff to go and have a look for, because it's not been disturbed. With regards to the main cemetery at the 206 camp, I mean, I believe there was in excess of 300 graves, British and Dutch, buried up there. You can see there's a massive, large open area, and we're making the assumption that that area is where the cemetery stood, and we had a quick preliminary look, and that's what I'm saying. We found some fairly large river rocks up there, which they often, Rod was saying to me, they often decorated their graves with either rock or even in some areas they use mussel shells from the river to decorate the grave. So he said they're the sort of things you need to look out for and try and identify. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. We got home last weekend, and we're already sort of thinking, well, maybe we need to plan another trip again next year.
But if you have any pictures or anything that I can add to the Death Railway site, the Thailand to Burma Railway, because I've got all the different camps lined out. So if you've got any pictures I can add, you did send me the one before with your daughter had.
Yes, the one at Cowden,
Anything like that I can add. One of your friends you get in touch with, he got in touch with me about the camp.
Chris.
And he sent me loads of pictures, so that was good. But I haven't added them because I've had so many other things to do. Really, you've got to keep the roll of honour ticking over when people send things in. You've got to keep it ticking over.
Chris is probably the authority on Cowden. He's spent more time out there than probably anybody else has. He's got a lot of information from the site, from what he's found, and he's also there is a piece of land at Tamarkan Camp which is still undeveloped, and so he spent a fair bit of time in there as well. And we went in there a few weeks ago and had a bit of a look around, and I found a beautiful 1 rupee Indian British Empire coin in marvellous condition in 1940, and in magnificent condition, because they're about 50% silver, so it's cleaned up, absolutely beautiful. On top of that, he's found some pretty good Australian buttons, Dutch buttons, and other bits and pieces. So it's amazing, that. It's amazing.
Some good pictures.
Yes, well, he's actually found a lot of good Japanese stuff out at Cowden. He's got some really, really good Japanese name tags and dog tags and things, and he's even found POW dog tags out at identification tags out at Cowden as well. So he's got very familiar with the farmer out there, and he's quite happy for him to go out there when he wants. And Of course, Chris always picks the time when he's cultivating or turning the ground over, because it's a good time to go metal detecting, and because they're forever bringing stuff up to the surface and rolling it over. I suppose it's a bit like the battlefields in France. They're forever bringing shells up. When each time the farmer ploughs his field.
That reminds me of John Cooper, because John Cooper, I mean, when you listen to John, he's like you, he bubbles, and he was over the moon with the stuff he was finding, because he was doing the same as you, Adams Park, and he was really into it, telling me all the stuff, and he bubbles like you. And that's good to listen. That's enthusiasm.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I always look at it upon if us crazy people don't go and do it, no one else will. It's that, and I love the challenge. I absolutely love the challenge. It's just it's working through the research, and each of these camps that we've now found, the 203, the 204, and the 206. I've done a lot of work reading diaries, reading descriptions, reading books, and then doing a lot of work on Google Maps, and just studying, and then doing. I do measurements from known camps to other areas where we think camps are. And every time we've done all this research and gone looking, we've actually found we're on the right spot, which has been fantastic.
Well, you've got a long time before your hair turns white.
It's starting to, a little bit on the edges.
Yeah. How old are you now?
56. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 56. Oh, not very long away. I'll soon start turning white. Anyway, I've got to finish at 11. Because we've got a lot to do, and I've got to take my boy all his stuff from his bedroom because he's moved out, and so we've got to take him all his stuff. So I don't want to be too late today, so I'm sorry, I'm going to have to finish at 11. That's been very interesting, though, everyone. That's been really good.
Excellent.
Yeah, Bernard, I hope they'll find the other tubes.
Ron, it's not a very nice experience when they poke in a pipe down your throat.
No. I had that done to me once, and that's horrible. You keep gagging. Oh, I hate that.
Oh, terrible.
To be honest, I hate
the last time, Ron, they weren't too pleased with me because I wet on the bed.
Oh dear. You would say that was with shock. That was with shock. Yeah. You always said I don't usually do that.
I was expecting the pipe to come out to the end, Ron.
No, I hate being pulled about. I mean, being in hospital with pleuris and they're pulling you about, and oh dear. But anyway, that's been really good. Yeah.
I said I'm looking forward to going back then.
Keep me informed and give me a ring on Messenger. Not today, because we're going to go out in a little while to take Chris's stuff over to his place. Okay. So not today, but give me a ring. Monday I'll be in. So get in touch on Messenger on Monday and we'll have a long chat, Bernard. Okay. All right, mate?
Okay, yeah.
Thanks, everyone. That's been really good. If you do get time, anyone, just have a look at the timelines. I spent a little bit of time on it. It's in the Roll of Honour under regiments. So it's a Federated Malay, I'm just trying to think of their whole, and you know what I'm talking about, the Federated Malay Volunteer Force and the Straits Volunteer Force. If you have a look at them and look at the timelines, the Straits Police is another one. Look at the timelines, because that really does show what happened to them. You can go right the way through, because Tsuk-Ching was between the 18th of February and the 4th of March. So if you have a look between those dates, you'll see what happened to the SSVR, because that's mainly when that did happen. And it makes more sense of all the pictures you tend to see, which you tend to think, oh, they were just Chinese civilians. But were they just Chinese civilians? Were they part of the SSVR? And so that's why the Japanese put them to death, because they were out of uniform. Jonathan Moffat, he's got a good example of that, and he said, was it a good thing that the commander of the SSVR told the men to stay with them and go into captivity? Now, did he do that because he knew that the Japanese would have them if they were let home? You know, so Jonathan Moffat he's quite feet on the ground type of chap, and he's good at his research. Anyway, thanks everyone. It's 11 o'clock. I'll stop the record now.